Thank you all for joining us today. I have a couple of updates to help get us started. And I'm gonna stop my video because my internet's being difficult. Couple of things as we get started. One, all of your passwords should have been transitioned over to the new system. So if you were trying to log in and having difficulties, it should be your school email address and then your chapter ID number with capital MN is your password. If that doesn't work for some reason, please reach out and let us know and I can get it reset. But your default should be your email address and your chapter ID number. So far, if you look at other trainings, you can see that we've done our profiles. Hopefully you've gotten your students enrolled in AET and done your teacher profiles. I know people are setting up courses. I got a couple of calls on that today, and you can start importing your students into AET. Earlier this week, I did send out a video that you can use with your students that walks them through how to do their student profiles. And that video was done by one of our student officers, so hopefully it's easy for them to follow. So should be able to just send them the link and they can kind of fill out their own profiles. Today we're going to be focusing on how to use SAE records, and then next week we're going to talk about how to use journals specifically for classroom and for FFA. So today's focus is really on trying to use those SAE records, specifically looking at journals, skills, documentation, and supervision. So I'm going to switch screens. All right, so as a reminder, as we are going through these, you can see all of our resources are on mnffa.org under resources, teacher resources, and then AET training resources. And today we have quite a few different resources here. So there's actually 4 different documents we're gonna look at. And I'm going to give you another kind of practice site where you can look at how these look. So our first sheet is overall looking at lessons on how to manage SAEs, entries in AET. And we're gonna focus just kind of overall, and there's a lot of information here on different kinds of SAE records that are taken, and that would take a long time to try to capture every single option, so we're gonna hit the highlights. The second cheat sheet are some help resources. And so it has it kind of broken down by career pathway. And so there's some good options there as you're trying to figure out things. Our next one is looking specifically at AET experiences. The breeding manager and the herd manager templates have some specific things depending on what species of animal you're raising. And so there's some great basic resources there. And then the last one is looking at SAE finances. So as I said, we're gonna focus on how to do journal entries today, but there's a lot more information if you wanna dig deeper. The last thing I'm gonna recommend is if you're looking for some examples of how this looks, there is a practice AET curriculum that's out there that kind of gives you assignments that either you and or your students can work through to try to help them figure out how all of these things work together. So if you're not quite sure, for example, how to do a unpaid SAE, you can go to this large animal care one and it kind of walks you through step by step what that looks like. So I did want to give you that example, and you can actually set up a practice AET account over here so that it doesn't mess up the students' records. And so that is an educational tool that you're able to use. Any questions so far? All right. So again, we are going to go to .aet.com. And I need to log out of that one. And your students will log into their account. It's not letting me. 1 second. So we're going to start with the student perspective. So when your students log in, this is what they're going to see. And we're going to focus on this journal tab and the finances tab. So starting off with the journal tab, just as a reminder, last 2 weeks ago, I guess our training focused on setting up those experiences. And so I set up a couple different kinds of experiences that we can look through, whether it's a school-based enterprise, paid placement, or starting our own business or a research project. But just as a reminder to go and set those up, students will just go to new, they'll name it, they can identify what kind it is, and then this experience part kind of sets up what tools they have available for themselves. So have them think about, are they going to have a paycheck? Are they going to have finances they need to track? Or are they only needing to track their hours and experiences in a journal? And then they can pick what career pathway it goes into, and then that'll break it down. But I've already done that for us today. So we can see that the planning documents have already been done. For example, my SAE in high school was working in a floral shop. And so I can put in my description, my time invested, and my learning objectives. And today we're going to see where those learning objectives come into play. So let's say, for example, that I'm volunteering or doing a job shadow at a floral shop. What I would do is then go under journal into time in my project. And I would enter in the day. So let's say it happened today. It's in my floral design project. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to add the skills that I need. And this is a newer feature on AET. So since this is at a floral shop, that would be in plant systems. And let's say that I got to do some floral design. So I learned how to make a boutonniere. So I can go ahead and add that skill to my experience of what I specifically did that day. You can add as many of these as you want. So let's say that we also mixed up some fertilizer, and then it'll save and go back to my journal entry. We can add hours, and now we can add minutes. So let's say I was there for 3 hours and 30 minutes. And during this time, I learned to make a boutonniere and corsage and mixed. If I have a picture of maybe what I designed, I can upload that. And then if my teacher visited that day, I would be able to go in and put in which of my teachers supervised me, and then click save or save and add another. If I don't remember where I left off the last time, I can go to review my journal entries and I can see anything that I put in so far. I can sort it to see all of my experiences over the years. And I can also sort them to just see what are my SAE experiences versus service versus SAE. And so I can see my summaries right here. So that's if you're just tracking hours or experiences. Questions so far? All right. So let's say instead that we actually got paid for those experiences. And so let's say I work at a floral shop. I would then go under the finances tab and I would do Sae Paycheck. Again, we can say I did it today. And when I set up my account, or when I set up this placement, I said that I worked in 3 different departments. I worked in landscaping, I worked in nursery operations, and I worked in floral design. So let's say, for example, that landscaping is not happening right now because of the time of day, and the greenhouse is closed. So all of my time is going into floral. And let's say my paycheck was $40. They took out 10 for withholdings, and I worked 7.5 hours. That's not very good pay. In the memo, I can go ahead and put in that maybe I had to buy a uniform for my job, and that came out of my paycheck. So that's why the income is lower. And then I can hit save. That then shows up in my expense journal. And so I have two different journals that I'm tracking. I have my finance journal, which I can review and edit in the finances tab, or I have my journal entries, which are non-finance ones. So there's two different kind of journal entries they can do. One is finance focused and one is time focused. What can I clarify? All right. As a student, there's some kind of cool reports that I can run. So let's say at the end or mid-semester, I need to turn in kind of a report of my details. Under the reports tab, there is a whole list of different reports that I can run. The first one is a journal summary. So this just shows all of my experiences, and this is SAE related. Next week, we'll talk about FFA and community service, and all of those can be done in one report. So that's one example of a report I can do. The competency mastery report, I think, is kind of cool. So this breaks up the amount of time that I spend by AF&R standard, so by educational standards. And so you can scroll through and you can see that I spent 3.5 hours working on growing media. And then if you scroll all the way to the bottom, I spent a bunch of time doing floral designs. So this is kind of a cool tool that if next or in 2 weeks when we talk about classroom, you can also have students assign their time either inside or outside of the classroom to the specific standards they're working on. And if you use this for FFA applications, that can really help in the future too. But it's a good way to help students reflect on the learning that they've had, because we all know that the learning happens in the reflection. So it lets them slow down, think about what they actually did during that time, and then track how much time they're actually doing. So that was the competency mastery. The other thing they can do under SAE profit reports is they can run reports on a single experience. And so if they need to print their SAE agreement, all of that information is downloaded into a nice form here. And so we can see these are the skills that I planned on learning. These are the things that I planned on doing. And then at the end of the semester, end of the year, they can actually go in and add their outcomes. And they have the data from their journal entries to back up how much time they actually spent in each of those skill areas. So it's an ability for them to connect what they thought they were going to learn to what they were actually able to learn. So there's some pretty cool here. They can also do a profit and loss report, which is good for them to think about, or a complete report, which has their plan, their skills, and puts in all of their journals, both the financial journals and the hour journals. So if you wanted one quick report for all of your students, that's something that they could run on their side of things. Questions on the student side of things? All right. So then if you click your chapter account, so if you log in as the teacher, this is what you're able to see. And so a couple of things to show. Most of these are in reports as well. So one that I find super helpful is the student grading report. And so if all of my students have done this properly, my class, and I can pull up just the records of my one class. So let's say that these 5 people have actually followed instructions and have signed up for my Intro to Ag class. I can see on one screen what they've done. So I can quickly look and see if their contact info has been filled out so file correctly. I can see if they've done their FFA profile correctly. And then I can see how many hours and activities they've logged in class, in FFA, community service. And this is where you can see all their AE entries. So I can see that my student, Lavin, has made $40 in 4 journal entries, and they've put in 7.8 hours in 2 journal entries. So depending on how you grade it or how you want to assess it, how many hours they have, how many dollars they have, how many entries they have, so that you can kind of think about as a teacher how you want to manage that. I know when I was in the classroom, I always said they had to do, it was 25 hours a trimester, and I think in at least 5 entries. And so they had to have at least 5 moments where they reflected on what they learned. And so this was the report that I filled, or that I looked at to do super quick and easy grading. And if something didn't look right, I was able to quickly just click on that student's name, and it brought me to their profile so that I could dig a little bit closer and say, like, oh, they accidentally put that as an FFA experience instead of an SAE experience, because something that they put didn't make sense. I found the grading reports for the teachers to be very helpful. I don't know where that just went. The other, you can also do student detailed reports. So you can see journal lists, financial transactions, placement lists. There's project grading reports. So you can see Zane and I both have projects in here, and so you can see what they've actually done here. You can do annual review all on one page. This is the different skills and knowledge that they've done. And so as a teacher, you can go in and you comments on what they've accomplished. Sorry, it locked me out. And then you can also do standards-based activity reports on all of your students based on either SAE or class journals. So we'll talk about class next week. Doesn't like that I'm bouncing between accounts. So I can go in and I can see which of those AF&R standards my students have hit. And so I know that these are the ones that students have done so far this year. So those are the reports kind of on the teacher side and on the student side. If we, so if you're looking for just some super overall details, the SAE Journals Guide is a great overall feature that can kind of walk your students through how to fill out a journal for the first time. Specifically, I'd encourage you to be clear about what you want in that description page, because that's usually where students struggle. If they have a paid SAE or they have expenses, like in a research project, there's some extra guides here. And then there's specific guides for placement, entrepreneurship, research, and foundational. Specifically looking at the foundational one, there is a good case study guide. So that's an example of some assignments that can be outlined for students, focusing on career exploration, financial management, safety, literacy, and then those experiences they can gain to be college or career ready. So I'd recommend checking out the foundational SAE page if you're just getting started on SAE. So those are the basics for today, starting out on journal entries. Next week, or in 2 weeks, we're gonna focus on what this means in FFA and in the classroom. But we just wanted to get you guys started on focusing on journal entries. What can I clarify?
you, Lavin, for doing this. It's nice to be able to see it and kind of know what you use for reports and all that stuff, because sometimes going through it all, there's just so much available.
Yes. And every student's project is a little bit different, but I found that those reporting, like, take all the differences and summarize it really easy to help grading for sure, and management.
I like that you did talk about being able to use some of the hours that are in classroom too. That is something that I didn't even, in all the craziness, I didn't even put that into thought. So, and I have an ag leadership class. So that SAE for career readiness and development, that is awesome.
Yep, I had a SAE requirement and a leadership service requirement. And so all of my students put in their leadership and service, either in community service or in FFA. And so they got graded on 2 columns, I guess, of that report.
Awesome. Okay.
So
I might ask you some questions on that when I get a little farther into that.
Absolutely. Other questions or thoughts on how you guys have used this?
I noticed on the invoice I had today, it was like X number of kids that were like 150 students. I think that'll be more than that. I don't, does it just go up to the next level if I add more than those 150 kids, or how does that work?
Great question. So today you should have received 2 invoices, and one of those was for FFA. So yeah, it does give you access to that as like your threshold, and based on your past reports that we had from you, we kind of guessed at where those tiers were. So if you need to be moved to the next tier, just let us know, and Julia and I can make that happen.
Yeah, it depends on what I do with my online class kids and everything like that. So
put them all in. Yep.
Yeah, and that's a good point. This is, it's for all ag ed students, not just FFA members. So at minimum, all the ag ed students will need to complete the profile, but right now, all the SAE tools, that's just up to you. So if you want to use it for your work-based learning courses or for award applications, or you could grade it if you wanted and do resumes in it, but at minimum, the only thing required minimum is that all students do the profile, because then you don't have to do your program reporting to us for Perkins, and you would use it for generating your FFA roster for the students that opt in, whether you do an application or however you handle that process.
Yep.
So that kind of answers my question. I was just going to say, so we aren't currently an affiliate member yet. I'm hoping next year that that'll be something that all my ag classes are required. And so, but I can put them in just as a student. They just wouldn't be into the FFA. Okay, that's what I was wondering.
Yep, every single ag ed student should have access to AET.
Perfect. Okay.
And FFA is just the financial agent for it. It's really a MAIL-C MAAE MDE project.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Zane.
We did cover the FFA submitting kind of thing a couple weeks ago, and we'll do it again in a few weeks. And I think Lavin has one video that's just the minimum stuff for this year, but yeah, you have the option of submitting them as ag ed only, or submitting them, not submitting them, or submitting them as FFA.
Okay, Lavin, would you send me that video if you have it? Yep. Okay, and I'll watch that. And then do you have an import or export where you can import lists, or is that one at a time?
Oh, that would be terrible. No, you can definitely, we walked through it a couple weeks ago, and she can share that.
Sorry, I missed that. Okay.
Oh, no, we totally get that. But you can export your lists from your class rosters, and then at minimum, you would provide like first name, last name. But if you want, like, I knew all my students' usernames for their computers. Like at the school, we always logged in that way. So I set up their usernames and passwords for them too.
Okay.
It's just based on how much you want to do. But no, what I like about AET is you don't have to make those silly codes for each student anymore. You just, I wrote our chapter number on the board, and I said, type in your username for your computer, and it got them in.
Perfect. That's what I like to hear. Ease, right?
I can show you if it lets me log in. It's being a pain. I was jumping between too many accounts. But all you need to do to get your students started is log in as the teacher and then go to accounts, manage all accounts,
Okay.
and then add accounts, click multiple.
Okay.
And you can literally copy and paste your roster from whatever your attendance system is
Awesome.
into here, and it'll auto populate a username and password. If you know what their username is for school already, you can add that, and then it'll reassign it to them. But I'll send you the video with those details.
This is awesome. Okay, thank you, Lavin. This is what I was hoping to learn today. So
good. Other questions? Hi.
Lavin, when you are putting in the students, so we have 3 teachers.
Yep.
And we have kids we share some kids.
Mm-hmm.
If I dump my roster in and then one of the other teachers dumps theirs in, will it sort them so that we can take out the duplicates? Or how does that work?
Yep. The great thing is you don't have to worry about duplicates as long as there aren't 2 students with the exact same name. So even if you know a student's already in there or they're taking, 5 of your classes, they'll get rid of the duplicates. Things to watch out for, and that's why it's nice to use an official list from the school, is sometimes you'll get like Maddie Smith versus Madeline Smith. And so you'd have 2 accounts for there, and they're super easy to get rid of extra accounts. So as long as they don't have the exact same name, you're good. And if they do have the exact same name, hopefully their middle name is different or there's some way. The only thing that I've run into is if you put in just first name and last name, their default username is their first initial and their full last name. So if I had like an Andrew Smith and Amy Smith, they're both A Smith. Mm-hmm. And so whoever I put in second becomes A Smith 1. And as a teacher, you can look that up, but usually that's a good example of why they need to change their passwords, because all of a sudden they're like, hey, I'm in someone else's account. And then I'd realize like they had a sibling or someone that was already in the class that had the same letter of their first name. So that's just my word of warning. If you only use the first and last name, is sometimes you do accidentally get people with the same usernames.
If you can give them any kind of a unique identifier, like if you know their school ID number and that's their username, like if your whatever platform you use tells you that, that's probably a better thing to assign the username, just because then if you, like say you have them and I'm your co-teacher and I have them too, if we both entered the same username, it would know it's a duplicate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or email address. But we also want it to be easy. So whatever you have access to.
So now our classes are semester long.
Mm-hmm.
So then the end of January, we would be able to go in and have those kids, dump those kids in, and those that are rotating between me or one of the other teachers or in another class, they would just be able to continue on with their profile that they've already created, right?
Yep. So the account is a chapter account. So all of those teachers in your school would share. And so they should be able to just do seamless. They just need to add a new class so that when you guys sort your students for like grading reports and stuff, then that's how you get those a lot easier instead of having to dig through. And so even if Zane and I were both teaching Intro to Ag, I would recommend having like an Intro to Ag Rada and an Intro to Ag Sheehan so that it's easy to see when you're pulling reports whose class they are. But it'll transition. They'll stay there for years. They can move between teachers. You can have multiple teachers accessing it. It's all pretty seamless.
Okay, great.
You can move them between schools. Like if you get a kid transferring to your school from another program, that teacher should be able to send them to you and their record books would all follow. And or if you had a middle school and then a high school program.
Other questions?
So Zane, on the, I guess the grant end of things and the whole levying end of things, are you guys working on training the business folks for that, or is that in the works or plans?
Yeah, we sent an email out last Friday to whoever your contact is within the levy. And so for most schools, that's a business manager or a finance director. And I got a lot of confused responses. So that's good.
Okay.
It gave Lavin and I the window to explain it and loop you in. But the base recommendation we're making is that because the schools get that levy back and usually keep it, they usually don't give the money back to you as the teacher.
Yeah.
We're recommending they just increase your budget. So if you're tier 2, they increase your budget by $68 for the match on it, and then you would just pay the bill knowing they'll get that $68 back later.
Okay.
But working through that, we know it's going to look different at every school. Like some schools don't even know that they can submit supplies in the levy and they're just doing salary, and
right.
And then others don't want to, and we don't want it to become a cost for you. Like you have to pay it out of pocket. So then we'll keep helping you, but just loop me and Lavin in as soon as you can in those conversations and let us know how we can help.
Yeah, no, I just know there'll probably be some questions on that end of things. Because I don't think that she's a new business manager. I really don't think she maybe had a lot of experience with that before. So she's still not convinced that they're going to get a bunch of all this money back. So I don't know. And I know she will, but I don't think she's convinced of that.
Sure. It's harder for me to insert myself in unless someone's breaking a law. But if you send me an email and request info, like, hey, can you tell us what we got on levy last year? I can then do a screenshot of your levy expenses and start that conversation with you. So just shoot me a note and make any kind of a request, and then I can kind of follow it up and start helping you.
All right. I'll probably end up going that route. So.
Any other questions for the good of the cause? All right. Well, as a reminder, if you can make sure that your teacher profiles and classes are in there, you can start adding students in and get their profiles set up. In 2 weeks, we'll be focusing on how specifically to use journals for classroom and for FFA. And so we'll be sending out an invite to that shortly. In the next couple of days, there's also going to be a quiz on that AET resources page for CEUs. So if you're collecting those for relicensure, go ahead and take that quiz. And a recording of this will be posted online if you want to rewatch anything. So,
Lavin, when are rosters due again, just so we know, like, when do we have to have student profiles done so we're ready to submit to FFA?
Great question. Rosters are due a little bit later this year. The board decided to move it because of National Convention. So rosters will be due November 15th, and then payment will be due by December 15th.
So that'd be the same deadline then for ag ed students. Like all ag ed students need profiles done by November 15th.
Yep. All right. If you have any other questions, feel free to stick around. Otherwise, we will see you in 2 weeks. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
I hope the whole school year is going well.
Thank you.